I'd been awake for 31 hours. I counted the way other people counted, sheep, methodically with grim acceptance, as the cabin lights dimmed to that low blue glow that always made me feel like I was inside an aquarium. Conference in Seoul, a presentation that ran 40 minutes long, a taxi driver who knew 6 words of English, all of them apologies, a boarding gate 3 terminals away from where my connection actually departed. Now I was wedged into 14A with my forehead against the cold plastic of the window, watching the wing lights blink, willing my body to surrender. It wouldn't. My mind kept doing that thing where it replays every awkward moment of the last week in high definition. The handshake I'd botched with the VP, the kimchi stain on my collar I hadn't noticed until lunch was over, the way I'd said great 17 times in one meeting because my brain had simply stopped producing other adjectives. I pressed the heel of my hand into my eye socket and tried again to sleep. That was when the intercom clicked on. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking." I stilled. It was nothing at first, just the standard line, the throat clearing of corporate hospitality. I'd heard 1,000 captains say 1,000 variations of it, and they had always blended into the soft white noise of travel, as forgettable as the safety card in the seat back pocket. But then, the voice kept going, and I forgot how to breathe. "We're cruising at 35,000 feet with calm air ahead of us all the way to San Francisco. I've turned the seatbelt sign off, so go ahead and get comfortable. The crew's going to start the dinner service in just a few minutes. If you need anything at all, they'll take very good care of you. On behalf of myself and the flight deck, thank you for flying with us tonight. Try to get some rest." It was, and I would struggle later to describe this to anyone who would listen, like someone had poured warm honey directly into my ear. The voice was deep, but not theatrically so. It had texture. It had patience. There was a roughness around the lower register that suggested late nights and cups of black coffee, balanced by a softness on the vowels that suggested the speaker was, fundamentally, kind. He didn't sound like a pilot reading lines off a clipboard. He sounded like a friend leaning over to tell me a secret. Like someone tucking a blanket around a sleeping child. Like, "Get a grip," I told myself. I did not get a grip. I straightened in my seat instead, alert as a dog hearing its name. I stared at the closed cockpit door 3 rows up and a galley away, like it was the entrance to a temple. The intercom clicked off. I sat with the silence, stunned. The dinner service came. I ate my lemon chicken with the dazed attention of a man who has just remembered he has a body. The flight attendant, a woman with kind eyes and a name tag that said Marisol, asked me twice if I wanted bread. I said yes both times. I ate 2 rolls. I waited for the voice to come back. It did, somewhere over the Pacific. A smooth, low murmur about turbulence ahead. Just a few bumps, nothing to worry about. Please return to your seats. And I sat there in my window seat at 35,000 feet and felt my heart pull toward the cockpit like iron filings toward a magnet. I didn't sleep at all. We landed in San Francisco at 6 in the morning, the sky outside the terminal the color of unwashed laundry. As I walked through the jet bridge, I tried, very subtly, to glance toward the cockpit door. It was closed. I saw for a half second the shoulder of a uniform jacket through the gab as I passed, dark navy, 4 gold stripes on the cuff. Nothing else. No face. I kept walking. The voice walked with me. I thought at first that I was just tired. That was the rational explanation. 31 hours awake, jet-lagged within an inch of my life, brain chemistry rearranged by red-eye salt and recycled cabin air. Of course a kind voice would stick to me. Of course it would feel like more than it was. Give me a hot shower and 12 hours of sleep, and the whole thing would dissolve like sugar in water. I took the hot shower. I slept 14 hours. I woke up in the slate-gray light of a Saturday afternoon with the voice still inside my ribs. Try to get some rest. I sat up in bed. I said out loud to nobody, "That is insane." My cat, Plum, blinked at me from the foot of the bed and said nothing. By Sunday afternoon, I had 3 browser tabs open and the airline's customer service number queued on my phone. I told myself I wasn't going to do anything embarrassing. I was just going to ask a simple, reasonable question. People asked questions all the time.
Hi, yes, I was on flight 887 from Incheon on Friday night, and I just wanted to say something to the captain, if that's possible. There was a small pause on the other end. Is this a complaint, sir? What? No, the opposite. He was great. I just wanted to... I'm so sorry, sir. We can only share crew information in connection with a formal complaint or commendation through our corporate channel. Okay, well, then it's a accommodation, definitely. He was very... I felt myself flounder. Soothing? Hot? The reason I'm awake at 4 a.m. staring at the ceiling? Professional, I finished weakly. Of course, sir. If you submit the form on our website, we'll pass your kind words along internally. But we can't share the captain's name or personal details with passengers. I'm sure you understand. I understood. I submitted the form. I wrote 3 sentences of generic praise, then deleted them and rewrote them 4 times. I gave up at, his announcements were a calming presence on a long flight, which was the most boring sentence I had ever written about anything and also somehow the truest. I hit send. I stared at the confirmation page. The voice did not magically appear in my apartment. That night, lying in the dark, I had a thought so dishonorable I sat up in bed to be ashamed of it properly. I could file a complaint. I could fabricate something. The captain was rude. The captain was unprofessional. And they would have to look into it. They would have to assign a name. They'd call me. We'd like to address your concerns, sir. It was a perfect plan. It was also the most disgusting thing I had ever considered doing. I thought about it for a full 3 minutes. I thought about lying about a man whose voice had felt, even through a tinny intercom, like a hand resting lightly between my shoulder blades. I thought about putting that voice in front of a disciplinary committee. I thought about the way Marisol, the flight attendant, had smiled when she asked me about the bread, like she was proud of her crew, like she liked working with these people, like the captain in the cockpit was someone she actually wanted to fly with. No, I thought. Not for anything. Not even for a name. I lay back down. I pulled the comforter up to my chin. I felt in a strange way like I had passed a test no one had said. I told Jules about it on Tuesday. Jules was my best friend, my college roommate, and currently a flight attendant for an entirely different airline, which made her exactly useful enough to be dangerous. We were sitting on her balcony with a bottle of wine open between us and the city humming below in its end-of-workday way, and I told the entire story in one breath. Jules listened. Jules sipped her wine. Jules waited until I had finished. Then she said, "Oh, honey, don't. You have a voice crush." I don't have a... You have a voice crush on a commercial airline pilot, and you tried to get his name by filing customer service paperwork, and you're going to die alone. I'm not going to die alone. You're going to die alone in a love seat at Pottery Barn listening to ASMR readings of the FAA handbook. I flicked an olive pit at her. She caught it in her napkin without looking, which was annoying. But she also, 20 minutes later, said, "I know someone at your airline. Operations side. Let me ask." Jules, don't get excited. I'm not asking for his social security number. Just Flight 887, Incheon to SFO. Last Friday. If anyone happens to mention who was flying the bird, I'm not going to plug my ears. I should have said no. I should have said it was crossing a line. I said, "Thank you," in a voice slightly hoarser than I meant. She found out by Thursday. His name was Michael. His last name was something I didn't fully catch the first time, partly because Jules said it fast, and partly because my blood had moved away from my brain. He was based out of SFO. He had been with the airline for 9 years. He was, Jules's contact said, one of the good ones. Like, genuinely. Crew likes him, doesn't yell. There was a phone number too, a direct one. Don't ask me where I got it. Just promise me you'll be normal. I promised.
I stared at the number on my phone for 45 minutes. I drafted 6 text messages. I deleted all of them. In the end, I sent, "Hi, this is going to be very strange. You don't know me. I was on your flight 887 from Incheon on Friday. I just wanted to say your announcements were very kind. Fred." I hit send before I could unsend it. Then, I waited. I waited Friday. I waited Saturday. I waited Sunday. On Monday morning, I allowed myself, briefly, to check my phone in the elevator, and there was nothing. By Wednesday, I had begun, in the privacy of my own head, to assemble a list of reasons it was fine that the captain hadn't replied. He's busy. He flies international. He probably crosses 11 time zones a week. He probably gets weird texts from passengers all the time. He probably thinks I'm a stalker. I am a stalker. Am I a stalker? I turned my phone face down. I stopped checking. The voice stayed. I hummed nothing and heard it. I stood in the elevator at work, watching the floor numbers climb, and heard, "Try to get some rest," like an after-image. I passed an airport courtesy van on the freeway and felt my heart do an embarrassing little flip. I gave up on Thursday. I really did. I decided I was being ridiculous. I decided I had to let it go. And then, on Saturday, I ran into a grocery store for half and half. It was the big one off Geary, the cavernous warehouse-style place with high industrial ceilings and the produce piled into pyramids and the kind of fluorescent lighting that made everyone look like they were having the worst week of their lives. I was wearing sweatpants. I had not done my hair. I had grabbed my keys and gone out specifically because I had run out of half and half, and my entire personality depended on having half and half in my coffee. I was standing in front of the dairy case, weighing the merits of organic versus regular, when I heard it. It came from behind me, from 2 aisles over, a low, easy voice answering some unheard question, something about, what was it? Yeah, the smaller one, I think. Yeah, that's the one, thanks. And I went so still that the cold from the open dairy door crept up my arm without me noticing. I knew that voice. I knew it the way you know your own front door in the dark. I knew it the way a dog knows its person's footsteps in a stairwell. The roughness on the lower register, the softness on the vowels, the patience of it. That voice, 2 aisles over, buying what? Something small. Probably groceries, probably real and actual groceries, like a real and actual person. For a long second, I did not move. Then I closed the dairy door. I left my half and half on the shelf. I walked on legs that did not feel like my legs, around the end of the dairy aisle and into the produce section. And there, beside the avocados, was a man. Tall. Maybe a little taller than me, dark hair cut short at the sides, a little longer on top, slightly damp like he had come from a workout, a gray Henley, jeans, a canvas tote bag on his shoulder with a bunch of cilantro sticking out of the top of it. He had, I noticed, in the slow frame-by-frame way of someone in shock, a very good jawline, forearms that suggested he carried his own groceries, a face that looked, somehow, like the voice had been telling the truth about its owner. He was reading the back of a jar of olives. I said, in a moment of pure animal courage and zero brain function, "Excuse me, sorry, this is going to sound very weird." He looked up. He had brown eyes. They went, in the order of all good faces, from polite to curious to something softer when they actually focused on me. "Yeah?" he said. That single word landed in my chest like a small, well-thrown stone. "Are you, by any chance, a pilot?" He blinked. Then, slowly, like a sunrise, he smiled. He didn't smile big. It started in one corner of his mouth and traveled the long way around. "I am, yeah," he said. I named the airline. "For them, yeah." "Okay," I said. "Okay. I'm sorry. I know how this sounds." I took a breath. I committed. "I was on your flight 3 weeks ago, from Incheon. I texted you. A weird text about your voice. You probably didn't. I'm sure you get—" His face changed. Not in a guarded way. in a way that suggested a memory had just clicked into place. "Fred?" he said. It was, I would later admit, possibly the best moment of my entire life up to that point. "Yes," I said. "Michael," said the man with the cilantro in his tote bag and stuck out a hand. "Hi." I shook it. I did not pass out, which felt like an accomplishment. "I meant to text you back," he said. "I'm sorry. I came home from that trip and went straight back out on a 4-day, and then I had... Anyway, I'm sorry. That was rude." "You're a pilot," I said helplessly. "I think that's like a job-protected reason." He laughed. It was a real laugh, soft and unforced, and it did to my nervous system what good news does. "I was going to text you tomorrow, actually." "You were?" "Mm-hmm." "What were you going to say?" He tilted his head. "Honestly, I was going to ask if you wanted to get dinner." I forgot what dairy was. "Yes," I said. He laughed again. "I didn't ask yet." "Whenever you do, yes." "Okay," he said slowly, smiling now in a way that was no longer slow at all. "Dinner. Friday. Are you free Friday?" "Yes," I said. I had no idea if I was free Friday. I would have canceled my own wedding to be free Friday. We exchanged numbers. I realized halfway through that I already had his number, which made us both laugh. And then he said, gentle and amused, "You're going to want your half and half, by the way." "How did you? You left it sitting open. I saw you on my way in." I wanted in that moment to lie down between the avocados and the limes and live there forever. "Right," I said. "Friday." Friday. I drove home with a half and half in the passenger seat like a passenger. I did not put on the radio. I listened instead to the voice in my head, which for the first time in 3 weeks was not a memory. Dinner one was at a small Italian place in Hayes Valley that Michael picked because, he confessed over the breadbasket, he had been there exactly once and had thought, if I ever go on a good first date again, I should bring someone here. And here we are, I said. And here we are. Michael and how did something wasn't, which I found, to my surprise, deeply attractive. He doesn't fake laugh, I thought. Thank God. I learned, over the bread and then over the pasta, that he was 34, that he had grown up outside Sacramento, that he had wanted to fly since he was 6 years old and had not, in any meaningful way, been talked out of it since, that his mother had been a flight attendant for 22 years, that he had a younger sister who was a vet, that he lived 10 minutes from the supermarket, that supermarket, and that he genuinely did all his own cooking, which explained the cilantro. "What's the cilantro for?" I asked. "Tacos." "Just regular tacos?" "There is no such thing as just regular tacos." I, a person who frequently bought taco kits from a box, did not argue with this. It was Michael who asked, eventually, about the voice thing. "So, walk me through it," he said. His tone was gentle, curious, no teasing in it, just real interest. "What was it about? Like, what did I do?" "It was the try to get some rest part," I said, immediately, because I had thought about this exact question many times and was prepared to answer it. Most pilots, they read the announcement. You said it like you meant it, like you actually wanted us to sleep. He was quiet for a moment, looking at me. "I did want you to sleep," he said. "I know," I said. It was the smallest sentence and the biggest thing I had said all night. He looked down. He turned his wine glass by the stem. When he looked back up, his eyes had that softness in them again, the one I had seen in the produce aisle, the one that felt, even brand new, somehow already familiar. "Okay," he said. That was the first date. Dinner 2 was at my apartment because I, in an act of bravery that surprised even me, had said on the phone 2 days after the first dinner, "What if I cooked?" I made roast chicken. I made it well, which I had not been entirely sure I could do. Michael showed up in a blue button-down with the sleeves rolled to the elbow and a bottle of wine in his hand and the same canvas tote, this time carrying a small box of pastries from a bakery I had never heard of but that turned out to be 3 blocks away. "How long has that place been there?" I said, accepting the box. 6 years. 6? You'll like them, trust me. I did like them. I also liked the way he handled Plum, who normally hid from strangers and instead came directly out of the bedroom, sniffed his ankle, and lay down on his foot. Wow, I said. What? Nothing. What? She doesn't do that. He looked down at the cat, then up at me with the beginning of a grin. I'll take it. Over dinner, I told him about the conference in Seoul, about the kimchi stain, about the meeting where I had said great 17 times. He laughed in the right places. He told stories back about turbulence over the Pacific that hadn't actually been turbulence at all, but a layer of clear air the radar didn't catch. About the first time he had taxied a 737 at LAX and his hand had been shaking. About his sister calling him at 3 in the morning once because a cat she was operating on had recovered, and she just wanted to tell someone. You answered her at 3 in the morning, I said. He shrugged like the answer was obvious. Yeah. I thought, very privately, oh no. Dinner 3 was a Tuesday because Michael's flying schedule did not respect weekends, and we ate ramen at a tiny counter in the Tenderloin, and his knee was, the entire time, pressed very lightly against mine. Not pushed, not insisted on, just there, a casual gravity like the press of a tide. I, a person who had spent a lot of his 20s dating men who could not sit still, almost cried into my broth. Dinner 4 wasn't dinner. It was a Sunday morning at Michael's apartment, which turned out to be sparsely furnished in the way of people who were rarely home, with one excellent reading chair and a wall of plants on a south-facing window. He made eggs, he made coffee. He poured me a cup, set it down, looked at me, and said, I want to be clear about something. My stomach dropped. I don't do this often, he said. Like, at all, really, with anyone. My schedule is brutal. I disappear for 4 days at a time. I miss things. I have missed pretty much every birthday party my sister has thrown in 5 years. Okay, I said carefully. What I'm saying is, I'm not casually doing this. His hand was on the counter near mine, not touching it, close. If you want casual, I'd rather know now. I, who had been 31 hours awake on the flight from Incheon, and was sometimes still 31 hours awake in my head, took a breath. I don't want casual, I said. His hand moved a quarter of an inch and covered mine. Plum was not there to witness it. I would, later, tell her about it anyway. Dinner 5 wasn't dinner either. It was a Thursday night pickup at SFO, 11:47 p.m., arrivals level. The city outside the terminal smelling like jet fuel and bay water, and the strange, clean coldness that San Francisco gets at no other hour. Michael had been gone 4 days, New York to Tokyo, Tokyo to Singapore, Singapore back to New York, New York to SFO. I sat in my car at the curb and watched the sliding doors. I had not, until that week, been the person who picked anyone up from the airport. I had been picked up from airports. I had taken ride shares. I had once, in the early days of dating Derek, asked Derek to come get me after a particularly brutal layover, and Derek had texted back, "Babe, just take a lift, it's 2 a.m." It had been, I understood now, a small sentence. It had been, I understood now, a sentence that had told me exactly who I was dating if I had been able to hear it. The sliding doors opened. Michael came out. It was 8 months later. I was in 7A this time. Michael had pulled some strings, the way pilots could pull some strings for someone they were dating, and gotten me an aisle in the bulkhead row even though I had booked late. I was on my way to Honolulu, of all places, for a wedding. Michael had 2 days off after the flight. Michael was, I had been told only that morning at the airport curb, going to be my captain. "You're flying me?" I had said halfway out of the car. "I'm flying you." "Since when?" "Since I picked up the trip last night. I wanted to surprise you." I had kissed him in the curbside drop-off zone while a TSA officer 20 feet away pretended very politely not to watch. Now I was in 7A. The cabin lights were dimming. The safety video had played. The plane was rolling, slowly, away from the gate. The woman in 7B, a kind-looking woman in her 60s with reading glasses pushed up into her hair, had asked me where I was going and then told me about her granddaughter's wedding, which she was traveling to in Maui next month. and we had settled into the comfortable companionship of strangers who had agreed, silently, to be pleasant to each other for the next 5 hours. The intercom clicked on. "Good morning, everyone. This is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard. We've got beautiful weather between here and Honolulu, a few high clouds about an hour out, nothing to worry about, and a tailwind that's going to put us in about 15 minutes early. Sit back and try to enjoy the flight. The crew is going to take very good care of you." A small pause, and then in the same easy voice, almost the same exact rhythm. "And I just want to say a quick hello to a friend of mine in 7A. Glad you're with us today, Fred. Enjoy the flight." The cabin, very quietly, did the thing cabins do when they realize something romantic has just happened in their hearing. There was a small ripple of ahs. A flight attendant near the galley grinned. The woman in 7B turned her head slowly toward me. I was already smiling. I could not stop smiling. I was smiling so hard my face was beginning to hurt. "Are you Fred?" she said. "I am." "Oh, honey." The intercom clicked off. I sat there with my hand pressed flat against my sternum like I was trying to keep something in. She kept watching me. She had a wonderful, conspiratorial smile. "You know," she said after a moment, "I have flown a lot in my life. A lot. And I just have to say," she nodded toward the cockpit, "that man has a lovely voice." I turned to her. I realized, in the warm, unhurried way you realize things at 35,000 feet, been waiting for someone to say that exact sentence to me for nearly a year. "I know, right?" I said. I paused. I let it land. "He's my man." She clapped her hands once soundlessly, like a delighted child. She said, "Oh," in a small, reverent voice, and then, "Oh, well done, dear." I turned my face to the window. The plane was lifting now, the city falling away below in a slow tilt, the wing dipping toward the bay, the sun coming up over the East Bay hills in long, warm bars across the water. Somewhere, 3 rows ahead and a galley away, behind a closed door, a man with a voice like melted chocolate was guiding us gently up into a clear blue sky. I closed my eyes. Try to get some rest, I thought, almost laughing. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. The end.